Hello and welcome back to Tapes of the Dead, and welcome back to the Spider's Web. Today we're going to be talking about Inhabited from 2003, featuring Malcolm McDowell. So this film opens up with a really nice fantasy-themed score over the credits, and it opens up with like a storybook with like elves and gnomes and all this fantasy like lettering and everything. And then right after we're introduced to this house that has a playhouse in the back, and the thing looks huge. It has the same fairy tale fantasy like aesthetic to it, and that's where you find out later in the film that there's a hatch in there that you can walk down and you go underground and everything, and that's where all the elves or gnomes or whatever you would want to call them live. So we're introduced to a family, a mom, dad, daughter, son, and it's early 2000s film, so the son is super 2000s. Like I believe he's either just full blonde or he's got like frosted blonde tips, and it's just so early 2000s it hurts. And the daughter immediately takes to the playhouse in the back, and it was immediately giving me very big Dolly Dearest vibes, but with the playhouse and the girl and everything, and her spending so much time in there, and like the parents like wondering why she's in there and not really being able to go in there because they're protecting the girl. So while the daughter is doing all of her stuff in the playhouse, we see scenes of the son, and he's like any other young son or boy in the early 2000s. He's on a phone, he's just talking to his friends, and there's this guy who answers an ad for like keeping up the house, like a groundskeeper, and he's talking on the phone, and the guy's eyeing him, and he's like, "Oh, hold on, I'm being scoped." I was just thinking, like, did anyone ever actually used to say that? I'm being scoped? So shortly after some of these opening scenes, we see the trolls lure the family cat into a bush and kill the cat. And this is where the editing really starts to like freak me out a bit, more than the actual movie and the trolls themselves, because you can never really get a good like handle on like what their scale is, like how tall they're supposed to be, and everything is so quickly cut. And it's like, it looks kind of good, but it's also, you can tell it's very obviously them on a fucking green screen with like giant vines and shit. But I don't know, just the way it's edited is like very unsettling, unnerving. A good example of that being shortly after the cat kill scene, where we see the girl having a tea party with the trolls. And you actually see them like sitting at the table with the girl, but I don't think you see them and the girl at the same time. And it's just, their scale always seems to change between scene to scene. I don't know if there's like, some are intentionally taller than others, but it's just always threw me off. Soon after this, we get our first human kill of the film, and it's the old groundskeeper guy, and he's trying to chase after this, the teen boy, trying to tell him like, oh, you gotta watch out for your sister, those trolls are no good, because he knows about the trolls and everything. He's like, oh, you gotta watch out for her. They got her in their grasp, and he goes to chase after him, and the trolls earlier in like the scene, like grabbed his knife, and they shoot it up through the ground, and they pull this wire taut, and then he trips over it, and the box cutter goes straight into his chest. He rolls over and he dies. It's pretty lackluster, not that great of a death scene, but cool enough. So it's around this time that we're introduced to Malcolm McDowell's character, and he plays like a psychiatrist or something like that in a loony bin, and he cares for this one girl who all she does is draw pictures of trolls, and we come to find out later on that the groundskeeper guy who was just killed, that was her brother. They were brother and sister, and we honestly don't see that much of him. He doesn't play that big of a role in this film. He kind of just comes in, and he's like the way that we're introduced to the one girl character who knew about the trolls from beforehand, because she used to live in that same house, and that's how the groundskeeper guy knew the house so well, and how he answered the ad so fast. And then eventually the mom steals the girl that used to live there and brings her to the house when they find out, oh, the trolls are real. It's like, oh, we gotta get out of the house and all that kind of shit. And then he comes storming up to the house, and he's like demanding for his patient back and all this and that, because he's writing a book on the girl, like that's his big meal ticket. He needs the girl back. That's going to be his new breakthrough. And they essentially tell him to fuck off. So he goes back to his car, and he finds out that the window has been cracked and broken into, and just says, "Oh, damn hoodlums." He gets into his car, and then from the back seat the trolls attack him, and it's just green screen so bad, and he's just like, ah, and it's like everything's like shaky, and they kill him, but we don't really even see how they kill him, we just know he's dead. Very shitty death scene, but I don't know what to expect from this movie. Then right after that, we see the family, and they know that they have to get out of the house. They know it's dangerous to be there, and that the daughter's in danger and all of that. Although they're taking their sweet ass time, and they're, you know, being really calm about it, we see the boy go up into his room, and he starts blasting music, because this is the time to, you know, blast music and take your time getting your fucking belongings. And this is the scene I really vividly remember from when I used to watch this movie as a kid, because I watched this at a very young age. And he's like standing on top of his bed, you know, trying to get his Linkin Park fucking poster down or something like that. And the trolls come in and they trip him, and they end up tying him to the bed. I remember seeing them like crawl out from the bed, and it's like almost like Gulliver's Travels. They just tie him up to the bed, and then someone steals this big knife, and in my head I remember them like taking the big knife up to his room and all of that, but it's actually just a different complete shot. Funny how you remember movies or scenes from different movies like that in a different way than it actually happened. So, and then eventually he gets freed, and then they end up going into the troll tunnels, and they're chasing around the trolls, getting chased by the trolls, and long story short, eventually they blow up the playhouse. And this is actually a great effect. It's a great explosion. And then the film cuts to 6 months later. We find out Malcolm McDowell's character is actually still alive, and now he's the crazy one, and he can't stop drawing trolls. I don't know why they added this. It's almost like yesterday's film, Dark Ride. It's like they thought they just had to add something to the end, like a stinger, when the movie would have been a lot better without it. Overall, this film is pretty solid. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. I think it could have benefited from some real gore, because it's only a PG-13, and the only blood we really see is from the handyman's death, and like a little splotch of blood when the boy gets bitten earlier in the film. And the main whimsical fantasy title theme is actually pretty good, but some of the music in the other serious scenes gives off the real bad, like, generic family film type of vibe. I could see showing this to my kids as like a first horror film, you know, something to really ease them in. Because some of the sequences with the trolls are actually well framed and actually like kind of terrifying, so I could see this being a great start. So as I said earlier, this isn't my first time watching this. I remember watching this when I was pretty young. I want to say maybe like 10 or 12 or something like that, and I very vividly remember having bonfires in my backyard, and we have a blue playhouse. Nothing as big and as fancy as the one in this one, but still enough to resemble it somewhat. And I used to be fucking terrified to be out there in the dark after watching this film and just thinking that they're out there or on the side of my house in like the pitch black. Those are the two main things I think about whenever I think about this film again, is being out in my backyard at bonfires and being terrified from this stupid little fucking film, and the scene where the kid is getting his posters down and he gets tied to the bed. So there's not a lot of options if you guys want to stick this one out and watch it. I know I found my copy at a local store for $3. I don't think it's anywhere online for streaming, at least I couldn't find it. But you can probably find a copy for $5 or $10 on eBay or Amazon. But that's it for today. Join me tomorrow where I'll be talking about Hobo with a Shotgun.